Hey everybody, Brett Fogle with your market recap here for October 7th. And so we've got a lot to dive into. So why don't we get started? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, but I just want to give you a quick wave and let's go ahead and dive into it. Okay, so a couple things in the news. I'll turn off my camera here so you guys can see that a little bit better. And so the market's here a bit spooked, down a bit this morning, number of things happening. There's some news in the economic macro world, but also another crypto hack, 570 million in a Binance linked blockchain hit. Earlier, it was reported as 100 million. Now it's 570 million crypto hacks. So we are still in the wild, wild west of all of these things here. This is representative of early adoption, early stage technology, and certainly somebody is taking advantage of that. So that's obviously not good. More fear in the markets. Also, Motley Fool reporting that Labor Department September jobs report disappointed the markets, so that is having a negative effect on the overall markets as well. So Bitcoin down 2% and Ethereum about the same. So we'll dive into that in the chart. Also, Visa, some good news. This is reflecting early adoption in crypto, which is always a good thing in the long run. And so a lot of things happening, but as more adoption happens, it will build upon itself. The bad news is temporary. The adoption is permanent and building a stronger foundation. So the fact that Visa partnering with FTX, one of the biggest crypto companies in the world, certainly one of the biggest exchanges, investing in a lot of adoption and other technology. So news is that Visa is teaming up with crypto giant FTX and to offer debit cards in 40 countries, including Latin America, Asia, and Europe. So that is leading toward adoption. So if there's any doubt this is not here to stay, Visa wouldn't be putting a big bet on the future of crypto if that weren't the case. And so we also have 70 other crypto partnerships, and MasterCard has also been getting involved in the space. So good news on the other side of it, and more on FTX on that same news here. Visa and FTX are partnering to permit crypto payments in 40 countries. So that's about it for the news here today. It did spook the market a bit. So if we dive over into the charts, I'll just close some of these browsers here. Let's just dive into Bitcoin. So basically, today and on the overall market here, we can see in this downward wedge, I want to call attention to something very important here because some people are calling for a rally in crypto. I don't see that. We have a bear flag that is technically broke down here, tried to regain, hit resistance at this trend line, is now below this area and is almost building a mini bear flag within the bigger bear flag. But clearly this is a bearish sort of turn of events. What remains to be seen is if we can hold this rising trend line here. The big question is, did we put in a bottom right here just at about 18,000? And earlier here in June, that bottom around 17,656. So technically, we're still holding this level, but it does not look very strong to me. And especially when we pull up our custom indicators, I'm now showing a bearish early reversal indicator along with our trend strength indicator turning over. So I'm very confident that we head lower from here and at least through another cycle here. And so, I do think that we'll at least come down to this trend line. And from there, I think that we go lower. And so, of course, this is all speculation, but the charts, I'm a big believer in show me the charts and I'll tell you the news. So this pattern is not bullish. Let me just zoom out a little bit. I was looking at this morning. We saw something similar happen back here last year. We saw triple test here of that support trend channel, and then it broke down. And so we are seeing that it did kind of come back up to kind of retest it here, and even on a larger scale at this level came back, but then rejected. So there are some similarities to this. We saw this a breakdown right here. It's kind of coming back out to try to retest that as support, but there just isn't any bullish news here to take us higher. There's a little bit of assumed bullishness in that the Bank of England and I'm hearing in other countries are looking at quantitative easing, but I just don't see that in the charts. Again, the news is disseminated smarter, more. I don't want to say more successful, but better backed financial institutions that hire the best and brightest in the financial world do bet and vote with their wallets. So we can see these clues, barring any unforeseen war events, things along those lines. Certainly, if Russia were to throw in the towel and that would lead to less uncertainty in the markets, we should see this push higher. But it's not sounding that way. Putin is doubling down on his war rhetoric, and so these are not things we want to take into consideration and try to double guess or second guess what we can see. So here, rejected, rejected, rejected. So this is going to come to a head here in the next week or so. By next week, either this will break up and go higher, or more likely, I think we'll break down and head lower. So with that in mind, with an overall bearish tone and outlook on the markets, let's jump over to the weekly, which we've been following. And so again, the 200-week moving average, this purple line, had been holding and been a strong support level for Bitcoin in the last bear cycle. It held here during the COVID crash, did not hold here, broke down, tried to get back above it, could not, and will now act as resistance. So right now we're watching the 300-week moving average right around 17,500, which I've been talking about for months. And the big question is, can it hold here? And if not, where could it go? So the next support, if this can't hold, if we see a weekly close below 17,500, then all bets are off. And so many people are pointing out this 14,000 level as a next level of support, which was the high back on June of 2019, right around the week of Monday, June 24th. So, there is that level on people's radar, but I am looking also at this 400-week moving average, which has never been tested or touched before, similarly to the 300-week. Do we get this far? I don't know, but this is not a far cry from that 14,000 level. So we'll be watching that zone, and certainly we can come out here to the monthly as well, which we've been watching, the monthly trading Bitcoin chart on TradingView. So similarly on this blue line, this is the 50-month, which corresponds to the 400 week. So let's just take a look at that. So the 50-month, and pretty close to anyway, irregardless, what I'm watching here again is this. Since we couldn't hold, or we're right at this level, right? So we're holding temporarily this 19,500. All eyes have been on this level, but since we did not hold this, the monthly candle for last month, for September, the fact that it closed below and right at that 19,500, but did go below it, this candle close is bearish, and so we are watching to see what happens here. And so either we hold here in October, traditionally has been a bullish month for Bitcoin, around 66% of the time, so it's too early to tell, right? So we have to watch this level here on the monthly candle close, and if it does close below this, technically it did sort of hold here right around 19,500 last month, but barely. This topping tail would indicate selling pressure. So it's going to be really critical to see how this plays out. If it cannot hold, next level of support, 16,500, which I had been talking about for quite some time here, and previously was the 200-week moving average, the 300-week moving average, and but this is a vector candle here. Typically, I found that the midpoints of these big candles are at least retested again. So in that sense, we could make an argument that this level here around 12.5, this mid-level could be tested, but I don't want to project too far into the future. If we cannot hold 19,500, I do think 16.5 is the next level of support, and if we can't hold there, then it's 14,000 in this zone, and then even down to 12,500. There is an outlier possibility. We have a CME gap still at the 97.50 level all the way down here, but that would be quite a drop on Bitcoin. So we'll wait and see how that pans out. We are seeing some lessening of selling pressure on the monthly MACD, so kind of some early signs that the heavy selling has eased a bit, but what I'm really watching for is these two lines, just like I was calling for everyone to get out of the markets back in January of 2022. I was actually saying back in November, let's get, this is not looking strong, we should be getting out, but really pounding the table in January when this cross happened. So similarly, somewhere down in here, probably if I were to project that into 2023, January, February, March, that we would really see this sort of crossing back to the upside. So, even though it's starting to ease up a bit, it's going to have multiple months here before it really starts to turn. And so we'll keep that in mind. And that's all I really wanted to show you on this here. Just jumping back to the weekly, though, I did want to point out that if we turn this back on, in terms of the stochastics RSI, also bearish, overbought territory and couldn't get back up to these levels. Does look like this will come back and head lower for at least one more bounce. Now the good news is if and when we come down to these levels and bounce, hopefully off a higher low, then this would be the range that I would be looking for some kind of a bounce on the overall markets on the weekly, something like this. So that remains to be seen in terms of this line too. This is the straight RSI is also coming to a resistance level on this downward trend line. There's sort of two levels of this. If we do see a push higher, I think it would be limited, but it's going to either break to the upside or the downside. Since we're in such a macro bearish cycle, and we've never seen this before, this very bearish overall economic environment where 35 trillion of stimulus printed in the last year really is going to take some time to deleverage. So I would expect and anticipate some double test of this lower levels, but anything could happen, as we know in crypto. So we want to watch and see what happens at these levels. We can also draw a line here at this all-important 40 level on the RSI, which has traditionally been a strong level of support once we get above it. So this again on the weekly chart. So let's jump back over onto the daily. I do think this comes back down into this range over the next few days, and then we'll see probably some sideways action here going into the end of the month. As this is more of a symmetrical triangle, which it will usually get close to the apex, not always right to the apex, before breaking higher or lower. But again, we have this resistance level, whereas this was support and support and support and broke. It could not get back above that. So again, bearish overall outlook on the Bitcoin. And let's take a look at Ethereum here, just jumping around a bit, and then we'll look at some of the indexes. So, and just skimming through some of the coins that I'm watching. Nothing really interesting here, although we can take a look at Metis, which is up 6.66%. Interesting number. Maybe that's one. Maybe anyway, won't get into that. Similarly, Ethereum in an a symmetrical triangle here. It's overbought here. My early reversal indicator is showing a bearish signal, and I do think that this is also overbought in overbought territory. So, market cycle, they ebb and flow. Since it is overbought technically here, and at support, it's a little bit worrisome that this support level will not hold on Ethereum. So we'll want to keep an eye on that. My overall radar also, I will note, is bearish across the board. This is my overall barometer of how the market is doing. I'll also pull that up for Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a little bit of a bullish nature on the 4-hour chart, but only because it's in this slight uptrend. Actually, the 4-hour in Bitcoin is more bullish than with Ethereum. Here we could see a bit of a bounce off this upward trend line, and in this sense is oversold. I have a bullish ERI. So there obviously are different time frames and outlooks with these things, but overall it's important I'm going to keep an eye on the bigger time frame. So with that in mind, overall bearish on my daily, weekly, monthly. Even if the 4-hour has a slight push higher, it's within this context of overall bearish, especially, and also in Ethereum. So I think this is the markets look weak to me, and so I would be careful with going long on any of these. So let's take a look at some of the indices here, and then we'll kind of wrap things up for the weekend. So far right now, looking pretty quiet for the weekend, unless this starts to break down lower, and support on Ethereum could come down in this 1200 range, but really not clear on how low it could go. My back up the truck and buy as much as I can level is between right in this range here, 400 to 500. Not sure if we'll get there. but we'll certainly keep an eye on it. It's premature to speculate. So in terms of the overall indices, let's just jump on over. Bitcoin dominance sort of had pushed back up higher, hitting resistance at this level. So it looks like money is flowing into stable coins like USDT. So we see USDT dominance up 1%. Not a huge amount, but not unexpected. This would also indicate that money's flowing out of crypto and into USDT. Ethereum dominance is not as well. I drew this line weeks ago, and I'm sorry, at least 2 weeks ago. So it's kind of following. It's very similar to what I had proposed within the channel on Ethereum dominance. So like money flows, ebbs and flows. So we're seeing a little bit of this Ethereum dominance starting to pick up. I think probably it's not going to go much higher or lower, but may inch higher and higher, and then we can see from the charts. Again, show me the charts, I'll tell you the news. I would expect this thing to push up higher over the next few weeks, but not in any huge hurry. With USDT dominance, all my radar is all green on all time frames, the 4-hour, the daily, the weekly, the monthly. This is another one of our proprietary indicators, and we called the radar aptly just so you can look at multiple time frames at once. And or we can but here's these trend lines. You don't have to get super complicated with the technical analysis. I'm not getting crazy into Fibonacci's or Ichimoku's or any of that stuff right at this point. They have their place, but right now I'm looking for the macro environment, and these trend channels have proven to be pretty accurate. So USDT dominance here is on the rise. So in terms of this, I think that as crypto comes down, this is another clue signaling that money may very well likely flow into stable coins and out of crypto as this runs up higher. Let's take a look at the dollar index here, which is also an inverse relationship to Bitcoin and crypto. And so again, these blue lines are an overlay of a prior cycle price action. So of course they don't overlay exactly, but we can see patterns in these sometimes. Let me just turn this thing off so we can see this a little bit more clearly. So we'll just hide that for the moment. So dollar index coming back off of resistance here up in this level. We've been watching this for weeks now, and so this is interesting. As the DXY pulls in, crypto should bounce. So with my other clues that we've covered here, it would indicate maybe the DXY pushes higher. Could it head higher? It can head higher. We've seen it if we really get into a nasty market here. And I zoom out a bit, again, large cup and handle pattern on the DXY, the handle breaking. So this certainly could pull back here on the DXY, but the U.S. government is going to do everything they can to prop up the dollar against other world currencies to maintain their status as a world reserve currency and just for our own economy. But as we saw all the way back in the 80s here, and the highest ranges up in this range, I think if we see the DXY continue to push higher, it's bad for crypto in the short term. But ultimately, these things, they'll figure out a way, or the world economy will balance. Again, there's ebbs and flows and cycles. Will it get this high? I don't know. If it does, that would be reflective of a overall major recession like we saw back in the 80s, etc. So, this is the zone to watch right here, where we saw this in the early 2000s. That's the most recent sort of news, and not news, but footprint and pattern that we've seen. So, again, this is a cup and handle breakout. It's worth noting. I haven't really seen this pattern in the overall indices or the DXY before, but everything is based on psychology, and it all kind of balances out. So it's worth noting and watching this. So from here, if we do see a pullback on the DXY, it'd be a short-term rally in crypto, although that's not what I'm seeing on the daily charts. And then from there, again, if we push up in these ranges, then a pullback at some point to potentially launch higher would mean a short-term rally, maybe a bear bull trap rally, into the next few months into, well, this would show, this is a 5-day chart. So on a, realistically, if you saw that come back into potentially even, early next year, but I wouldn't look at the timeline here. I wanted to zoom out, when in doubt, zoom out, and just get another clue on what we're seeing on the overall markets. So with that, worth noting. And so let's also jump over to the total market cap, which is still below a trillion. And so that all important number has yet to hold. So the squiggly line here is something we looked at a couple weeks ago, possibly this breaking down. It did faster than expected. So these trend lines are worth keeping an eye on. Not a huge clue here, but really that trillion level is so important as a flagship level for the overall crypto markets, kind of the North Star. Bitcoin is our North Star. This is sort of the line in the sand. So we're below that all-important trillion mark. So what does that mean? I have projected that since it is failing here, this is another bearish sign rather, that we can redraw this a bit. This breaking down, if we see the total market cap below 750 billion, then there's really nothing holding it up down till these ranges. Now, the good news is if we get down into the 500 to 600 billion level on overall crypto, that is a great time to be buying. And not financial advice, but we can see here that these cycles do play out, and this is also an accumulation zone from all the way back here in December of 2020. And of course, we know what happened right around December 2020. We saw the markets take off like a rocket. So this will be strong support if it gets down in there. But the current liquidity zone rather, in this window is also the area from early 2021 this year. So, it's a matter of, will it hold? Will it hold this, let's call it $800 billion level? So these are lines in the sand that we want to watch. But there is also, as you may see on this screen here, there's a big bear flag that has broken. So that would give us a target of 600 billion. Here's the flagpole here. Here's the flag, and the flag broke down in here. Now, some people would draw this differently, and so it's if we draw that textbook style from there to there, it still puts us down around the 690 billion mark. So it remains to be seen. And so, the other reason I drew it the other way is because of this level. There wasn't a lot of support here back in this range. So it is a big question mark. But in terms of, since it's kind of come back up to retest that, I'm going to leave my levels here, my targets. So, and I have an alert at 600, just above 600 billion, because, believe it or not, not believe it or not, but as we have seen, that people will front run these. Many people are probably watching these levels, and will they actually let it get this low or lower? This is an area, a buy zone, which I would suggest a good place to be dollar cost averaging and waiting for some momentum to come back in this market, which will happen again. And so with that, let's jump around just a little bit more, and we can look at a few more things. Nothing really looking strong here today. However, skimming through my list, there is an interesting project called Metis. This is the Vitalik's mother and her friend rather, created this, and Vitalik's mother is on the project here. It's not a buy recommendation, but it's an interesting bottoming here. It's an interesting project that boasts to be able to beat transaction speeds, and so anything like that has a great revenue model, certainly worth paying attention to. And again, we see this cup and handle pattern forming. So it's interesting. It's one to watch. I have an alert set here at 24 cents. I do not own Metis, so it's just something that we're keeping an eye on. It's held relatively strong during this whole downturn, and this does appear to be an accumulation zone here. So in terms of that, it would lend itself to logic that if Vitalik, his mother, is on board, and they, as an advisor, probably worth watching. So at some point, we'll likely see, like Google, going, if Ethereum, which I can't imagine it not being a tier 1 crypto in the future, once it becomes more established, and potentially some are saying flipping the market cap of Bitcoin, these market leaders at some point will go on massive acquisition and M&A cycles. So this is a potential acquisition target for Ethereum. It's kind of the long answer on this. However, still very early. If this is, again, not do your own research, this is just interesting to me. And to get back to the old highs here in the next bull cycle, certainly these coins we have seen to run quite far. So the only reason I'm pointing it out is it's up quite a bit today, 7% in terms of everything else, which is down. And certainly this is not all of the cryptos in the world, but I do look for strength in times of weakness. And so when strength comes back into these markets, these are the ones that typically can really take off because they were strong when everything else was weak. So it's just something to keep in mind. And with that, I'm just going to jump back over to Bitcoin here and see if we can see anything else. I did have Metis on a short-term time frame that is kind of breaking out of this downtrend, but that's enough about that coin. I would be very careful getting into any coins right now, especially the ones that don't have a revenue model that possibly are sub $1. It's certainly a good time to possibly dollar cost average in some of these with a smaller amount that you can afford to lose. You should always invest responsibly and stick with the top tier projects with the bulk of your accounts, generally a good idea. So again, Bitcoin remains to be seen. Where does this thing go? Just another look at it on a slightly different chart, but overall is looking pretty bearish in terms of the scheme of things. Here's just another chart. It's definitely still in a downtrending channel, and no reason to get excited about it. If it gets above 21.5 here, or let's even say 22,000, I'll set an alert here. Bitcoin, you can either try to catch the lower bounces and/or breakouts. So this is what I'll be watching and just set an alert, because if we can get up to 22,000, really above 23,000 is where I'd like to see that as a signal that, hey, this trend has turned, because that is where that upper edge of the trend channel is and above this recent high. And to be fair, also around 25,000. So, we have seen many fake outs. There's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines, and the market makers are notorious for pushing things out, making it look like a breakout or breakdown, and then reversing that. So that's all we have time for today. So hope you guys have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. I'll just give you a quick wave, and we'll pick it up again next week. Not sure what's going on with my camera. There it is. All right, everybody. Well, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.